What's up guys, you're watching Li-Fi TCG. Just this weekend there's been the Magic Fest Los Angeles, which had a Mythic Championship qualifier, which is basically like a new PTQ from the Pauper format. And the 3 matches from the top 8 were played on coverage on stream. And one of these was Tortured Existence versus Tron. So this is probably going to be an interesting matchup with, you know, some of the harder decks to play in the format, I think. Going to be lots of decisions involved, and spoiler alert, so if you don't want to know the results of this match, close the video now. The Tortured Existence player wins, which is quite surprising because this is like a relatively difficult matchup for Tortured Existence. Some people think it's like one of the hardest matchups for the deck. So I've watched this match through to the end once, and I've made like a few notes, but I'm not going to refer to those now. I'm just going to try and remember like the few important details that I did see. So if I get to the end and I forget to say something, or I might like put an additional comment down below, so check that as well. And again, I've got to be a bit apologetic for my recording setup. I've literally got my phone balanced on a cookie jar. It's like sitting in my glasses case on the top of my laptop, pointed at my laptop screen. And I know I could get some like screen recording software for my PC, but this is one of my like older laptops, and any additional load on the CPU is probably just gonna like melt it instantly. So here we go. Who's on the play? Can't remember. I think both players keep 7 on game 1. Tortured Existence on the play. Map. It's a good start for Tron. Cycling Barren Moor, I guess that's fine if he has enough lands in hand already, but in general, I wouldn't want to cycle lands into Tortured Existence until the late game, because you're trying to develop your mana. This is a huge priority. Another Tron land, so again, perfect start for the Tron player. And the Rot Farm is pretty good for the Tortured Existence player as well. Whoop, almost drawing 2 cards. Tortured Existence and Spore Frog. So in general, against Tron, I don't always like casting Spore Frog, because it's a really weak attacker. The ability doesn't really do anything, and you can use Tortured Existence to upgrade it later on. But in this case, he has no creatures in his graveyard yet, so he needs to sacrifice it so he has a Tortured Existence target, so he can discard his Stinkweed Imp. So I think that's fine. So the Tron player finds his 3rd Tron land, goes Prism, and then I think Mulldrifter here. Yeah, so basically the perfect start for the Tron player. We're already so far ahead in like cards and mana. It seems like it's going to be pretty difficult for Tortured Existence to win from here. Yep, so he makes the play, sacrifice Spore Frog just to put it in the graveyard, discard Stinkweed Imp, get this Spore Frog back, dredge. So he milled 2 Stinkweed Imps and a Grave Scrubbler. So this guy's playing, I think 3 Stinkweed Imp in his deck list. So here you can see like a bit of the pain of the redundancy there. You know, those could have been some other options perhaps, but he just has a bunch of Stinkweed Imps. But it's not setting him back too far at the moment, so he scrubbers 1 from his hand and he gets back 1 Imp and 1 Scrubbler past the turn. Mulldrifter gets in. So I just want to pause the video here quickly because it's getting a bit too far ahead. So recently I've been really off Grave Scrubbler, and like I've been championing Gorgon Recluse instead. So my biggest criticisms of Grave Scrubbler are that it doesn't affect the board very well at all, and the card advantage is too much. You don't have the mana to be able to leverage it often enough. So in this case, you can see that the Scrabbler can't block Mulldrifter, but obviously Gorgon Recluse couldn't either. Gorgon Recluse would be better at attacking through a Mulldrifter if the game ever came down to that, which it very likely might. And the other thing to realize is that with this mana configuration, you see he's got Rot Farm, Bog, Swamp, so he couldn't actually cast the Gorgon Recluse there though, because you need triple black. So Scrabbler looks maybe a bit better in this situation, but again we'll see how much those free cards actually matter. So back to the Tron player. He's played another Prism, Dinrova Horror, targeting Rot Farm. Again, it's a huge setback for the Tortured Existence player. Discards the Stinkweed Imp. Tortured Existence is so mana hungry. Dredging 5 again. Gurmag Angler, Tilling Treefolk, Brown Scale, Fume Spitter, and Commune with the 5 cards. So it goes Swamp, get the Gurmag Angler back, Rot Farm, bouncing the Bog. I think he just plays Gurmag Angler. Yep. So there's a little bit of a question of what to delve away here. So he keeps the Treefolk and a land and the Stinkweed Imp. One of the Stinkweed Imps. So he's exiling Fume Spitter and Brown Scale, which is probably fine here, just because those cards aren't that important in this matchup. Like the life gain's not that relevant from Brown Scale, and neither is the Fume Spitter activation. So I think this is probably correct. We have a Mulldrifter attack. So Jasinto's on 16 now, I think. I have the overlay blocking the life total a bit. Seagate Oracle. So you've noticed that the Tron player didn't want to trade his Dinrova Horror for these. Oh no, sorry, this is Gurmag Angler. Never mind, I thought this was 2 Scrubblers, but we'll see that this come up in a minute. Bit of a delay here. Don't know what the players are talking about. Apparently there was like a bunch of banter in this matchup between the two players. If you were there live to see it, but of course we don't get any of that even with the audio on. But Huey and LSV do a good job. So we have another Dredge 5 here. Spore Frog, Forest, Thoughtpicker Witch, Crit Rats. And then another Commune. So the Gurmag Angler attacks. And he doesn't want to trade for the Dinrova Horror here, even though he could if he wanted. So no blocks, I think, is the play. Or he chumps. No, he chumps with the Seagate Oracle, I think. Yeah. That's fine. Bog, Exile. Yeah, again, like, that's not too tricky because the Seagate Oracle is not that important. If you want to pulse, you're going to be doing it on the Dinrova Horror or a Mulldrifter later on. Then we have an end of turn Alchemy. Notice that the Tortured Existence player has 3 mana up right now. Tap, draw. So you can see the power of Gurmag Angler here is putting a lot of pressure on the Tron player. So here the Tron player attacks with the Dinrova Horror. And the Tortured Existence player Madness is in Grave Scrabbler that we knew about because we saw him return it to his hand earlier. So he brings back Tilling Treefolk and Thoughtpicker Witch, and then double blocks the Dinrova Horror. So this is a pretty good play by the Tortured Existence player, and I think it's a mistake by Tron. Taking your Dinrova Horror off the board here is not worth it. even if you can immediately pulse it back. If you can immediately pulse it back and you have actually like literally nothing else going on, then I think maybe it's fine. But having it in play is just so much more mana efficient if you draw a Flicker or a Teachings later. Because what you really want to be doing in this matchup is keeping Tortured Existence starved on mana by Dinrovaing their Rot Farm. So letting it die makes it much more difficult to set up the lock, especially when your opponent's been like bouncing bogs and so on for the early turns. You know, they can disrupt your graveyard. Yeah, so I think that was a mistake. It looks like post-combat that was another Mulldrifter and a Mnemonic Wall. Returning Forbidden Alchemy, I think. So here we have Tree, getting back Barren Moor, and then Forest. So he plays the Forest and then plays the Thoughtpicker. Here I think this is maybe a mistake by the Tortured Existence player. What he can do instead here is play Tree, getting back Moor and Forest, then play the Moor tapped, then use his untapped Bog to get Crypt Rats back, and then the next turn he can play the Forest, untap his Barren Moor, and he'll have 5 mana and he can Rats for 2 straight away. So that clears the board of all the Mulldrifters, deals 2 to the opponent, and leaves his Gurmagangler and the Tree, because just letting these Mulldrifters get in for 2 every turn, I think the Tortured Existence player is going to lose that race, because the Tron player is always going to have enough chump blockers, like with the wall and plus whatever things he's going to draw into. Can I adjust this angle a little bit? Not really. Yeah, so the Tron player is always going to have some chump blockers for this one angle that you need to deal with the Mulldrifters, and taking this line with the Thoughtpicker prevents you from doing that, because next turn your only land drop is going to be the Barren Moor. And you won't have 5 mana or Crypt Rats in your hand, because right now you can see here Crypt Rats is in the graveyard. Sorry, I can't quite fit the whole screen in the frame, but you can see where my cursor is, that's the Crypt Rats. Oh, that's a bit better. Anyway, so we'll continue. Anyway, he's got Thoughtpicker Witch now instead. Then we see the end of turn Alchemy. 3 lands in the graveyard. I didn't quite see why he took there. So the priority for the Tron player right now should just be to get his Dinrova Horror online. Another Mulldrifter, that's fine as well. Because he cut himself off of his mana like we just talked about, there's no way he can Rats next turn. So he might be forced to start Spore Frogging instead, to deal with the Elemental Air Force. Another attack for 4, so pulls down to 10. Map, crack. Getting another tower, I assume. Yep. And then end of turn, activating Thoughtpicker Witch. Revealing Stonehorn and Prophetic Prism. Exiling Prophetic Prism. I mean, obviously that's not a very high impact play, but at that point the Treefolk isn't really doing anything either. So I guess it's a wash. I think at the end of turn the Tron player just discards 2 cards to hand size there. So yeah. Upkeep, discarding Sync getting Crit Rats back. As we've noted, he won't be able to activate it for 2 this turn because of the way he sequences land drops. Well, I think the first card he dredged there, it's Dead Weight, and then it's Spitter, Carrion Feeder, Crit Rats, Tortured Existence was the dredge. So, we've got another Angler attack coming in here. Jason's only at 16 now? No, the life totals haven't been updated, that can't be right. And then, yeah, like I said, we can't rats this turn, so we're going to start Spore Frogging in order to slow down this Mulldrifter aggression. See, end of turn, Pulse of Murasa. So this angler is really out of contention. Yeah, and in comes the Dinrova Horror again. So, again, like as the commentators rightfully say, the Thoughtpicker Witch is really not scary at all because the Tron player is just drawing way too many cards every turn. Frog locks that down. No damage from the Mulldrifters. What's going to be? Obviously, he's going to play the Dinrova Horror here. So either the choice of target should probably be just the Rot Farm. You can bounce the Tortured Existence, which itself doesn't actually achieve anything, but if you have a counter for it on the way back down, then that can shut down the whole engine of the Tortured Existence deck. So in that case, it can be worth it. So he does choose the Tortured Existence, so hopefully he has the backup counter. Going a little bit slow here. So this match was actually sped up. If you watch it on Twitch at 1x speed, the Twitch is playing a recording of this match at like 1.2 speed, and that's the speed that we're watching it right now. So end of turn, I think what happens here is that he like thinks about activating Tortured Existence, discarding Brown Scale, but instead he decides to cast Gnaw to the Bone instead, if I remember this turn correctly. Yeah, so he gains like 14 life, but that's totally irrelevant because either he's gonna lock the game out with Spore Frog, or he's gonna have all his permanents annihilated by Dinrova Horror, so his life total is basically irrelevant. Maybe it gives him a few turns to not Spore Frog and use his resources in another way, but it's not going to change the outcome of the match too significantly, I wouldn't think. Chooses to dredge here, draw, sorry, because I don't think he has any dredges left in his graveyard. Replays the Tortured Existence again, and it gets hit by Prohibit, so we can see why he didn't overhorror it. Then another Tortured Existence comes down, and Tron player is counting his mana, and we have a Condescend for the second one. So, with no Tortured Existence, how much mana has he got? 6 mana versus like 20, and then Angler Witch versus 3 Mulldrifters, Walled and Dinrova Horror. This is not looking good for the Tortured Existence player. Angler attacks, and again, Tron player can just take it because he's Pulse of Murasa a bunch, or at least once. So then the Tortured Existence player has to resort to just hard casting Brown Scale, which he just sacrifices to Thoughtpicker Witch immediately. And he exiles Prism. I didn't quite see what he kept on top. But the Thoughtpicker Witch is just totally irrelevant. cycling Remote Isle, and then flashing back Forbidden Alchemy. 7 mana with a black, yep. Gets teachings off that, revealing Pulse, Mulldrifter, Moment's Peace. There's his mine. And again, this game's over because he can just teachings for flicker, and that's it. So, I don't know if I can speed it up for this last bit. Speed 1.5 times. So he plays Stonehorn. Why not, I guess. Then attacks with the team. Jasinto draws 6 mana. Sync Brown Scale. So again, all these deadly creatures are irrelevant. We have teachings for flicker, and that should be game over. Oh, this speed's quite manageable actually. I think I'll play at this speed for the rest of the match. I'll pause it if anything interesting happens and I have to talk about it. So yeah, that was a pretty typical game of how that matchup tends to go. You can't really the way this Tortured Existence deck is built, it can't really pressure the Tron deck enough. And then they just assemble their combo and destroy all your permanents. So I'll skip to the start of the next match. Whoops. Next game rather. So we have Swamp into blue-white Gainland. And I think the Tron player mulligan to 4, so that's worth keeping in mind. We have Tron land, and then fetching for double black. So I don't like playing these in Tortured Existence. I'm assuming he's playing it for the Tilling Treefolk value. But otherwise, because he's only black-green, it's just worse than a Golgari Gate, for example, because you have to choose between one or the other colours. Here we have a turn 3 Liliana Spectre, which is a really good card in the matchup. Like, it's good at attacking, and it's also card advantage, stripping your opponent's combo. Unfortunately, it only discards a Moment's Peace, but that's fine. And here we see Mesmeric Fiend taking Dinrova Horror again. I'll just pause quickly. It's a pretty good play from the Tortured Existence. Mesmeric Fiend's not a card I like in general too much. Just because you're mainly like a Crypt Rats control deck, and it just dies to your own Crypt Rats eventually. But again, in this matchup, Tron's not playing too much removal, especially the Stonehorn version, and you're unlikely to ever need to use Crypt Rats unless they quad Mulldrifter you like they did in the previous game, which you can always just protect yourself with Spore Frog. But then again, do you want to be keeping Spore Frog in your deck? Post-board against Tron, probably not. So anyway, this Mesmeric Fiend looks pretty good. The Tron player doesn't really have anything going on right now. There's construction going on outside, try and ignore that. And he's resolving Commune right now, so. Taking Thorn seems like a correct decision. The other option is taking Angler. End of turn teachings. So this is an interesting decision from the Tron player. We've just seen Thorn be revealed off of the Commune, so there's a decent argument for taking a counterspell here. You're only taking 3 damage a turn from these 2 attackers, the Spectre and the Mesmeric Fiend, so you're not in danger of dying anytime soon. And if the Thorn resolves, you're in a pretty precarious position. So I think there's an argument for just teachings for like Condescend there, and then just trying to wait until you draw out of the mana situation. And there we see him top deck the last Tron piece, and he alchemies immediately, taking map, ditching Pulse and 2 lands. So there's an argument for just keeping the remote isle there, because at the moment No, I guess he's got that. He needs that alchemy flashback, so taking map's probably correct there, so he can get a black source. But then we see the Thorn come down, and Tortured Existence player becomes the Monarch. So this is a pretty big game for the Tortured Existence player. But you can see that the Tron player can easily catch up on cards. You saw the Mulldrifters the previous game. It's very easy for the Tron player to come back from this. So we have Mulldrifter here, looks like, yep, draw 2. So we've already recovered from our mulligan basically, and then we have a Stonehorn. Of course, Tortured Existence player already the Monarch and only has 4 power in play, so this isn't the most exciting Stonehorn. And then we have the Thoughtpicker coming down again. So no attacks obviously because of the Stonehorn. Caterpillar, sacrifice it straight away. So again, I don't like this. I think that the Tron player just draws way too many cards that Tortured Existence activations have like almost no value. But because Paul, the Tortured Existence player, has the Monarch in play, he can kind of afford to do it. Hammer time outside. I'm pretty sure the microphone picks that up, but I don't know if you can hear that or not. We have Seagate for the Tron player. Again, too fast for me to catch what he got. I think he has another. He has a wall in his hand as well, which I'm not sure why he didn't cast. So we have Tortured Existence. So now we have like the full engine. We have the Monarch. We have Tortured Existence, and the Spectre comes back now. Discarding another Moment's Piece, Rot Farm, and then just leaving everything back. Tortured Existence chooses to draw here rather than dredge off the Monarch, and I think that's fine. He already has all the creatures he needs, so he just needs more mana right now. He doesn't need to dredge looking for anything at the moment. I think that's it. Okay, so we know why he didn't play the Mnemonic Wall, because he has Teachings end of turn for Ghostly Flicker. And maybe that was incorrect, as we can see in a few turns. So I'll talk about that when we get to it. Now we have the wall getting back Pulse. And Mulldrifter. See, that's okay. So this is like Hearthstone 101, right? Don't draw last. Just so you can't even see that because it's off the top of the screen. But why would you play Mulldrifter last? Right, and before after you wall back the Pulse, because if you can draw 2 cards off your Mulldrifter, and then maybe you have more options to decide whether you want to play the Mnemonic Wall or not. So now he draws the Stink Redimp, which is a little bit odd, but I don't know what he drew off the end of turn Monarch. And now we get the Treefolk back. Play that. Get lands. And this Tortured Existence deck isn't really equipped to provide a clock. Well, he does have Gourmet Angler in the graveyard actually, which I'm a little bit more of a fan of getting here. But it doesn't really beat Stonehorn plus Wall plus Flicker. So here we just have an attack for 1. And activate Thoughtpicker, sacrificing Witch. exiling Shimmering Grotto. So Shimmering Grotto not very important here. Again, I'm really unimpressed with Thoughtpicker Witch. This game's basically been entirely decided by Mesmeric Fiend, Liliana Spectre, Thorn of the Black Rose. And it's not even clear that the Tortured Existence player is going to win. So for the draw last thing, maybe he was trying to bait to see if there was going to be like a Fairy Macabre on his Pulse or something, and then Mulldrifter afterwards, but I don't know how that changes his play. I'm pretty sure it's just a mistake. So here we have a Dinrova Horror targeting the Tortured Existence. Again, he has the Rot Farm to target, which is just the far better thing here, so I assume he has another counter for it on the way back down, but he can't because he has no blue mana. So that was probably just a punt. And then we have an end of turn Witch. So the end of turn Witch, sacrificing the Fiend, untap, play Tortured Existence, then play Mesmeric Fiend again. And then we have the trick with the trigger on the stack. Sacrifice it. So it's like the Oblivion Ring trick. So the Tron player is going to have a card from his hand permanently exiled. And here you see possibly the mistake of tutoring for Ghostly Flicker before you can use it. And now you're just going to permanently lose it forever. And I think he had that, the Tortured Existence player had that whole setup when the teachings resolved. So perhaps that was a mistake by the Tron player to use their Teach Existence so prematurely. Oh, a bit of a jitter in the, getting some jitters in the video. What's going on? Hello? Sorry, I'll just rewind a bit because there was a lot of weird things happening there. So, okay, so here's the Flicker getting exiled. Yep. And that's a pretty big setback for Tron. Because once Tron loses its recursion loops, its threats aren't very impressive by their own. So all these are just vanillas, right? Once they can't be flickered forever. And we have a middle of combat Grave Scrubbler. And a huge block just to keep the Monarch, which is probably fine because once you have so much mana, you have Tortured Existence and the Monarch, you can afford to just basically throw resources away because you have Scrubbers to get them all back again later anyway. So we have another Dinrova Horror. But again, without any flicker, it's a little bit too late to meta. Now he targets the Rot Farm correctly, but he really needs to find a flicker. Because he's gonna create a big board to block all these Dinrovas, and then once he does find the flicker again, it's just gonna get exiled. So it seems like the Tortured Existence player might have locked the game up. Here we can see Thoughtpicker choosing between Map and Remote Isle. Obviously not the most impressive effect, but the Mesmeric Fiend is what we really care about. Taking the Pulse of Murasa, correct decision, leaving him with Mulldrifter and Stonehorn. And then here we have an Angler coming down. So, despite the huge chump block spree in the previous turn, Torch of Existence has rebuilt their board again. And looks like there's no good attacks for the Tron player. Mulldrifter. Another one. Thornwood Falls. So trying to get more coloured mana. It's definitely the bottleneck for Tron at the moment. Map. Getting Grotto. So have even more coloured mana for the next turn, but has he got the spells to use it is the question. And here we see end of turn Witch activation. Again, these aren't really doing anything. Exiling Alchemy. I guess when the Tron player is like desperately digging for spells, like trying to thin their deck of action, it can be semi-useful, but this is only like a viable play because we're in the late game and he has so much mana and the Monarch, so he can afford to just like spew off creatures to Fate Seal his opponent. And here we have Crypt Rats being cast. No response because the Tron player is tapped out. And an end of turn Dredge off the Monarch trigger. Oh. Back in time, 5 seconds because the video's bugging out. Attack with the Mulldrifters. Before Crypt Rats activates, I'm going to Thoughtpicker you. Taking out Unknown Shores. Rats for 2, destroying the Mulldrifters. I probably would have just Rats for 3 there to kill the Seagate as well, but again, like it makes almost no difference. Or even just let the opponent hit you and then untap and Rats for 4 and kill their whole board. That seems like the much better play actually, to be honest, because then your Angler cracks back for 5 and then your opponent has nothing and you have the Monarch again. But again, if they follow up with more creatures, then your Angler gets blocked and then things become a little bit more complicated, so respect Paul's decision to maybe not be so greedy. But here we have the Rats coming back for a second time. Oh, you can't see that. The Tron player played a Seagate Oracle after combat. And then the Rats gets hit by Condescend, but with Tortured Existence in play, that's not going to be very useful for very long. Discarding the Caterpillar, getting the Frog back. Which is kind of strange, but it seems like Paul's aiming to win the long game with his Fiend exiling strategy. So as long as he holds the Monarch and doesn't let Ames get too many cards, then it seems like that might be a viable plan. So Pulse for the Tron player, getting back Mulldrifter. Because he knows Rats is on the horizon, I think maybe he should have just evoked it. Okay, we have an end of turn discarding Crypt Rats, which is a bit strange. Getting back Thoughtpicker. Is there going to be another Mesmeric Fiend here? And then he just immediately discards Thoughtpicker. Getting Grave Scribbler. Okay, so I can see it changed his mind. Activate Grave Scribbler. Now cast Thoughtpicker. And now the Mesmeric Fiend trick. So like while this looks very fun and like cool to like exile all your opponent's cards, it's worth remembering that the Tron player like mulled to 4 here, so he got off the ground very slowly, and Paul was lucky enough to hit the Monarch on turn 4, which is really giving him a lot of extra resources to help fuel all of this, because as you can see he's using almost all of his mana every turn, and right now he only has like 3 cards in hand. So there's a lot of cogs in this machine, and he was maybe quite fortunate to get them all going before the Tron player deleted all his permanents. So we see 2 maps and 2 Stonehorns, and the Mesmeric Fiend exiles a Prism, and then we have another activation of Thoughtpicker Witch taking Capsize, which is probably like the biggest hit it could have possibly got. But again, because Ames is still relatively bottlenecked on coloured mana, can't even make too much use of Capsize. I think he only gets like at most 2 buybacks, and he can't really target creatures because of the Thoughtpicker Witch. Actually, what was I talking about before with the rats? If you untap in rats, it doesn't matter what creatures they play after combat. I feel like that was just the correct move by the Tron player. I mean, by the Torch Resistance player to hold the rats instead of just using it for 2 on the Mulldrifters. So here we have Ghostly Flicker going. Don't target Torch Resistance, it only costs 1 mana, so if they want to replay it again, it's the like easiest thing to possibly do. And here we see he's going to lose his Flicker. He just has, the Torch Resistance player just has way too much mana, and this sacrifice engine won't let the Tron player hold any resources in hand. So another Torch Resistance comes down because he discarded the first one, but he obviously had a second. So again, we're on twitch.tv 1.5 speed right now, discarding Penumbra Spider. Is he playing that main deck or did he board it in? Can't remember. Madness. Get back Mesmeric Fiend with the perfect 3 mana remaining to cast it and pop it with the Thoughtpicker. Okay, it looks like we have a response with the Mesmeric Fiend on the stack. Oh, it looks like he might be thinking about Ghostly Flickering the Dinrova Horror bouncing Thoughtpicker Witch here. Oh no, he just scoops it up. Would that have saved him? If he Dinrova Horrors the Thoughtpicker Witch, he doesn't have enough mana. No, because then he just loses his Flicker to the normal crit rats. I mean, the normal Mesmeric Fiend without the sack. And then he has no way to deal with the Mesmeric Fiend anyway. So I don't think that saves him in the long run. We'll go skip this deck tech because nothing interesting is discussed in it. And we'll go to match 3, game 3, sorry. So we have turn 1 Thornwood, turn 2 Swamp Thoughtpicker, then Power Plant Prism, attack for 1 Rot Farm. So not a very impressive start for Tortured Existence, but there's no such thing as an impressive start for Tortured Existence. Turn 3 Seagate. Commune. Turn 3 for the Tortured Existence player. Brown Scale, Wickabout Elder, Jungle Hollow, Grave Scribbler, and another Commune. So he takes the Wickabout Elder, which is fine. Tron player has a read of that. Tron player deciding whether to attack for 1, and he attacks. So it looks like both players are on 19 now. Another map and a Thornwood Falls, another Thornwood Falls. Thornwood Falls easily keeping up with this Thoughtpicker Witch damage. Draw step, dredge, brown scale, gain 2 life. So I guess the Seagate Oracle is not really doing much damage either. Only milling 2 lands, and here we have the Thorn coming down again. So possibly a scary situation for Tron. We have the map activated to get the last Tron piece. Sorry I can't quite fit all the cards on the screen for you guys. Hopefully I'm keeping you updated with all the important stuff that's going on. Untap. He plays the tower, so he has 7 + 2, 9 mana. A little bit of thinking going on. Hand waving. Looks like there's a Teachings in hand, Mulldrifter. Okay, he casts Mulldrifter, leaving up Teachings mana, and he looks like he drew Condescend off that Mulldrifter. So he has the choice of Teachings or Condescend here, which is quite nice. So Thorn attacks. Of course, Jason just takes 1. And here we have 3 mana. Hard cast Fury Macabre, which is very interesting. So Paul obviously very scared of having his Monarch stolen. And here we have the Condescend on the Fury Macabre. But I want to pause the game here because I'm really not sure if that was a good choice or not. Because remember, the opportunity cost here of Condescending this is that the Tron player can't cast Mystical Teachings this turn. And of course, the Tron player has 9 mana available right now with double blue. And we know he's playing Capsize in his deck as well. So there's a really strong consideration here to just let the Fury Macabre resolve. Then Mystical Teachings for Capsize, then you untap and buy back on the Rot Farm. But and then at that point the mana development's super stunted. And the Tron player can just take over the game with their superior mana and just ignore the Monarch for a few turns. But the choice here is to Condescend the Fury Macabre, which obviously has a lot of appeal because without a flyer on this side, Jason can take the Monarch this turn. So here we see that happen. Mulldrifter attacks. Looks like Torch Existence player discarded Swamp to hand size, which is something that I could strongly disagree with. I think just having all your mana for Torch Existence is so important. And here we see Mnemonic Wall getting back Teachings, which again I think is the wrong play. Like, we've already seen in the previous game that it seems like Tron actually can't win late because it has no answers for the Mesmeric Fiend loop if you let the Torch Existence player get to the late game with all their mana. So here we have a block to save the Monarch, so he loses his Seagate Oracle to the Thorn of the Black Rose. And then he casts Stinkweed to try and block the Mulldrifter. So hopefully we see... So this is another spot where you could Teachings for Capsize. And we're almost getting to the point where we can buy back it twice. Yeah, so the play of like Mnemonic Wall getting back the teachings is more like a play to like not die and play to the late game. But it doesn't seem like the Tron deck is necessarily favoured in that spot. Draw 2 off the Mulldrifter, play another Tron land. And then Oracle. It looks like he put Mulldrifter on the bottom, but I don't see what he took. And then end of turn, draw off the Monarch. Discarding land and alchemy to hand size. So yeah, he's really hunting for Dinrova Horror right now. Double blocking the Witch. I mean the Thorn. So he loses both his Mulldrifters. Then another Commune for the Tortured Existence player, which I don't know if I like. Oh no, he hasn't found a Tortured Existence yet, so that makes perfect sense. So he gets on now. Yeah, so there's the Tortured Existence. So now with the Fury Macabre in the graveyard, that gives Paul a lot of options to stop whatever Jason's doing. And Fury Macabre is definitely a card that I strongly like in this matchup. And then we have the Condescend for Tortured Existence, but it looks like Paul can just pay for it. I don't know if I like that. Especially with the immediate follow-up Swamp. Because now he can just get Fury Macabre if he needs it. So a lot big tap out. Now we see the Capsize. Not enough mana to do it twice, unfortunately. Oh, now there is. And now we see the double Capsize. This is exactly what we need. Because this is the play that can't be stopped by the Fury Macabre. Of course, this Capsize doesn't go through the graveyard. So a very good play from the Tron player. Dredge, Brown Scale, Mongrel, Jungle Hollow, Spore Frog, Liliana Spectre. Tortured Existence player plays a Swamp because he can't really afford to play out Rot Farms here because they're just going to get capsized, and we see the Thorn come down, taking the Monarch back. Here we see a Capsize on Swamp, and another Capsize on another Swamp, which I don't know if I like. Of course, one of those Capsizes is just irrelevant, because Paul can just replay the Swamp for free and with his land drop. So it's only really the second Capsize that actually does anything. And here you see the Mesmeric Fiend come back, and it takes the Capsize. So looking at his hand here of the Tron player, I think the play in the previous turn was likely just casting Mulldrifter, because capsizing basics is such a worse tempo play than capsizing Rot Farm. At least this way you're putting a flyer on the board, and if he wants to start casting Mesmeric Fiend on you, that's mana that he's using that he can't play something like Liliana Spectre to block it, and then hopefully you can try to get ahead that way. Again, we see that this guy still has Moment's Peace in his deck after sideboarding, so I don't know if that's a problem with his deck construction or if he could have boarded better to fix that, but it's definitely not a card that really does anything in this matchup. So Capsize dies, gets hidden under the Mesmeric Fiend. And remember that the Tortured Resistance player is still the Monarch. So now we see the Mulldrifter. And evoke, so evoke, and then with the evoke trigger on the stack, flicker it. So Tron player draws 4 cards here, and I can respect this play, but again, I think that's what he should have done the previous turn. Uh-oh. Okay, just give me a moment while I fix my internet. Oop. So, what do you guys think of the match so far? I think overall the Tron players maybe made a few extra mistakes. And it looks like it could be costing him soon. With the Mesmeric Fiend engine online again. Okay, sorry, one moment. Okay, so we were at the point where, oops, that's the next match. I've got to find the spot in the video again. So we're at the point where the Tron player has just had his, now you get to watch some Familiars versus Delver while I find the spot in the game again. Unfortunately, I live in a shithouse student accommodation with bad internet, so you just have to deal with that for a while. Oop. Okay, we've reassembled our ghetto tripod. Now we just have to find the point in the match. Don't want to go ahead too far because you might get some spoilers. Alright, this looks like about where we were. Yeah, we're just about to see the double capsize from the Tron player, so we'll try and skip ahead a little bit. Yep, there's double capsize. Skip ahead again. Yeah, here's the Mesmeric Fiend resolving. Okay, so we're back where we were. And again, in this turn, instead of double capsizing, he could have Mulldrifter flickered, and it would have given him a better board to challenge for this Monarch. Instead of just getting like instantly Mesmeric Fiended and really only taking paw off one land. So hopefully in the 4 cards that he's about to draw, he finds a Dinrova Horror, because otherwise this situation might start going downhill pretty fast. It doesn't look like he's hit one, or maybe there's one in his hand now. Unclear. Nope, I think that was a Prophetic Prism. So, hasn't found any big threat yet. The next turn, Paul can play his 4th Swamp, activate Tortured Existence to return the Spectre, and then the Mulldrifter can't get through. Discards Fengraf to hand size. Torture Resistance untaps, has a brief squiz at the graveyard. Oh, Dredge 5. Can't really see why he hit, doesn't matter. He's already got all the cards he needs. He's going to play his 4th Swamp here. I think we'll see the Spectre return, just to keep his board presence scary. Because yeah, we really expect that the Tron player is not going to have any removal for this Mesmeric Fiend. Oh no, he's just hard casting Imp. Okay, well that's one way to deal with the Mulldrifter. And I guess Spectre is not totally relevant because the Tron player has so many free cards to discard. And keeping up the 1 mana for like the Fairy Macabre seems worth it. So, yeah. I got outplayed by this Tortured Existence player. He definitely made the correct move there, I think. And now, yeah, exactly. He's exactly going to get punished for it right here. So, with the Mnemonic Wall trigger on the stack, he's going to activate the Tortured Existence, getting the Fairy Macabre back. So, Ames is only going to draw 2 cards off this. So he's deciding what other card to exile, apart from the Ghostly Flicker. I don't quite see what it was, but probably not that important anyway. So here he draws 2 cards off the Mulldrifter trigger, the only one that he gets because the Flicker's exiled. And then we have a flashback of Alchemy maybe. So if he left Alchemy in the graveyard, so I don't know why he exiled. Looks like a bunch of lands and a map. I'm not quite sure what he took. It looks maybe like another Tron land. Yeah, and this Tron player has no win conditions apart from Flicker. And it looks like even with 4 swamps, that's enough for Torture Resistance to keep the Fiend engine going. So slowly but surely, it looks like Tortured Resistance might win this game again. So the Tron player just trying to figure out if he can actually win, it looks like. Having a think. Guys got to play faster than this in real life. We're at 1.5 times speed, and we're still going way too slow. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. How many mana can I make in one go? Alchemy. Yeah, the with one of your Flickers already exiled, and with Mesmeric Fiend, and especially Fairy Macabre online, Yeah, I feel like the Tron player just has no way to win. The only relevant cards are the ones that can attack, which are Mulldrifter and Dinrova, which are basically just vanillas, because the extra cards don't matter unless they're drawing specifically more Mulldrifters or more Dinrovas. And then Capsize is hidden under the Mesmeric Fiend, which with the Capsize exiled, Mesmeric Fiend can't be removed. And then any one of Flicker's already been exiled, and if he plays the second one, which I assume that his list is playing, with the Mnemonic Wall trigger on the stack, he could just Fury Macabre again. So I don't know whether this Tron deck is necessarily misbuilt, or if it was just like a meta call. It must have been like a decent choice, because it obviously got him to the top 8 through like 6 or 7 rounds of Swiss undefeated. But it really lines up really badly versus Fury Macabre, especially. So the things that have been really good this game are the Thorn of the Black Rose, and Fury Macabre, and arguably this Mesmeric Fiend, because otherwise this Tron, the Torch Resistant player really has no good ways of dealing with Capsize. So in a way he's just a bit lucky that he found it in time, because I think Mesmeric Fiend is only a one-off. He might be playing another one in the sideboard, but all the lists are up on the Channel Fireball website, you can check that. So he gets another Flicker back, and he's tapped out with the Fury Macabre in the graveyard. So maybe he can make some use of that. But no, it looks like he's just discarded to hand size because he's run out of mana. And again, like, because of like the overall thing, like the overall strategy of like how the Tron player has this only one specific avenue to win, and how it's so cleanly shut down by the Fury Macabre, like it's a little bit pedantic to try and talk about like individual plays here, because there's so few things that actually matter. So at 1.5 speed, we're waiting for this Tron player to discard to hand size, and he just discards the Flicker, which he returned to hand anyway, and a Dinrova Horror. There's no way that's correct. It makes no sense whatsoever. He's getting rid of his only win condition, even if it is just a 4/4 vanilla. Maybe he's just given up entirely, and he's just waiting to scoop. Thorn only attacks. He's going to sacrifice the Mesmeric Fiend to give the Capsize back. And I don't know about this play, because he only has enough mana to rebuy the Mesmeric Fiend and then play it again, but he doesn't have enough mana to sack it. So he just has to take the... Doesn't he just price into taking the Capsize again? Oh, he has a land in hand. Okay, that makes a bit more sense then. So with the trigger on the stack, he's going to sack it into the Thoughtpicker Witch. Didn't see what got exiled there. Stonehorn on top. And then the Mesmeric Fiend's going to take the Capsize away. See, as we can see, the Tron player has 2 teachings in hand, but he just has nothing relevant he can get. So you can see that, like, what tends to happen in a lot of Pauper games, right, is that this kind of thing will happen because the win conditions are so diddly. Like, every player can execute whatever their desired game plan is, usually. So what often happens is that, like, rather than one player getting lucky and, like Scapeshift, like in Modern, right, you would say that Scapeshift is like a bad matchup for Tron. But Tron can still win if they just randomly get, like, turn 3 Khan. And the Scapeshift draw just isn't really equipped to deal with that. Like, in Pauper, those kind of things don't really happen because the win conditions are so bad. So it gives both players normally, like, a lot of turns. And we can see here that that's exactly what's happened in this game. Nobody has an effective win condition, so the game drags out to, like, turn 20. And then both players can execute, like, exactly the plan that they want. And the Tron player's plan, which is win by looping Flicker, lines up really terribly against the Tortured Existence plan of Sandbag Fairy Macabre. And Capsize is a good way of beating that, because it doesn't go through the graveyard, so Fairy Macabre can't touch it. But the Tortured Existence player was just lucky enough to find his Mesmeric Fiend in time before losing all his permanents. So maybe there's a few errors by the Tron player in those games, here and there. Maybe in some spots the Tortured Existence player could have made some slightly different decisions, but overall I think he played okay. In the end, you could just see that even though people typically say that Tron is a really bad matchup for Tortured Existence, as long as you just get your Fairy Macabre in time, without the loops, Tron basically just has a bunch of boring vanilla creatures. And if they don't have any way to, if you can disrupt their loops and they have no way to disrupt you, then the Tortured Existence recursion can easily beat some random Mulldrifters and 4/4s. So, what Ames could have done, maybe he had more of a plan for the Mesmeric Fiend, like after game 2, when the Mesmeric Fiend stripped his hand so much, he should have considered boarding in something like Serrated Arrows if he has it. I don't know if he does or not, but something like that would definitely be a good option. Much better than all these Moments pieces and Stonehorns that he's leaving in his deck. And he maybe should have been more aggressive in trying to find the Capsize faster, before Paul can set up all of this looping with the Thoughtpicker Witch and the Mesmeric Fiend and the Thorn of the Black Rose to fuel all of these sacrifices. So really interesting match. I enjoyed watching that a lot. I'm not convinced at all that Thoughtpicker or Mesmeric Fiend is actually necessary. Like, you can see how little effect the Thoughtpicker activations are actually having on the game, and maybe Mesmeric Fiend is like quite good in this matchup, but I don't think it does anything above and beyond what Fairy Macabre does to make it worth it, if you see what I'm getting at. And especially in the main deck, it's so bad against so many other matchups where you need like Crypt Rats activations to win, where Mesmeric Fiend just won't do anything. And if you're not playing Thoughtpicker or Carrion Feeder, which I don't like either, then you have no sack outlets to take advantage of the trigger. So it gets even worse. So definitely Tron players need to have a plan for Fairy Macabre. But Tortured Existence players, I would say, don't get too cute with Fiends and Witches. Fairy Macabre pulls enough weight, and I think you can afford to make your deck much better in these non-Dirtle games. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that. Really good job to LSV and Huey. I thought they did a great job covering this match. I haven't watched the other matches of the top 8 yet either, but I might do that later tonight. If you disagreed with any of my lines or you have anything interesting to say about that match, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. This is Life TCG signing out.